on another DIY project, but this time it's not on the Skyline, which is unusual. Usually I'm working on that. Today I am working on the Blackwing. So Ventress is finally getting some love. I'm adding some gauges over here. I'm actually gonna hold this button for 5 seconds. It brings up those gauges, but I'm adding some gauges up here, which will give me some extra temperature readings. It'll give me knock sensing, but I also think it gives me the ability to turn on my coolant pump so I can bleed that of any air without having to jumper it or get it to turn on through that. But this already has a lot of gauges on it. It has my oil temp, my oil pressure, my coolant temp, and then my tire pressures. And then it also has a lot of other readings that, you know, all types of other stuff that's functionality. Cool thing of starting a car like this is if you're starting in the morning, you can press the button and get your tour mode and turn your dual mode exhaust off. But today I will be adding these gauges. It shouldn't be a hard install, but I say that all the time, but I really think this one will be really easy. And then I'll be able to show y'all all the extra functionalities these extra gauges give me. So the first thing you have to do this is you got to remove this vent. But to get to that vent, there's a bolt down there. And I believe you just yank down here and this whole side panel comes out. If I fuck this up, oh, it didn't mess anything up. So there's the bolt. So yeah, this just pops out. There's some snaps on here. So I didn't mess this up. But you pop that out, you take that bolt out, and then you can remove the factory vent. So that's the first step. Looks pretty simple so far. After getting that panel out, you gotta get this bolt. It is a 7mm bolt. It sits right here, and you get that bolt out. And then you've gotta pry this little piece at the bottom out. I pushed on the top to get the bottom to come out a little bit, and then popped it with a little pry tool. And then after that, I think it just comes out. Yeah, it just comes out. So this is the factory vent that goes in there. So now I get to put the aftermarket vent on, and maybe I will figure out a way to put some foam around the aftermarket one because it doesn't have this nice little foam to seal it. So I'm gonna find a way to do that. But yeah, that's the next step. So I take that prior statement of needing foam back because this actually has to clip onto there. So there's a little clip up top. You pry that little clip out and then this pops off and then you put this on that one. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and then route the wires. So far, this is turning out to be a very simple install. So before putting this together, I actually got smart and reread the instructions. I forgot that I've got to cut a hole in the side of this to route the wires through it, which in my opinion is kind of stupid because this is all the air is going to go into this whole duct, but only one part of it goes back out to the windows for the defrost. This part I'm sticking my finger in. All of this is going to be hot. I mean, it's going to be air conditioned, so no frost in it, but it's going to be hot air going to the gauges, because that's just going to go there and there's no need for the air there anymore. So I don't know why they just didn't make a new 3D printed piece that just narrowed this down to just this and had space here for you to put the wires in. But hey, I'm not trying to be smarter because the last 2 installs I did, I tried to be smarter than the engineers who made this and messed stuff up. So I'm going to do exactly what they said because I'm not going to mess this up, hopefully. So the next step was drilling a hole into that. So I drilled a 1/2-inch hole. I started with a smaller hole thinking I only had to fit one, but no, since it's a dual gauge, I got to fit both of these in there. So it was about maybe, I don't know, 2/64 lower than 1/2-inch, whatever size that is, where these both fit, but they were super snug. So I went up all the way up to the 1/2-inch. So your size may vary, especially if you're only running 1 gauge, so you won't need it this big. But after that, of course, I deburred the edges here, just to get it as smooth as possible because I have to reseal this. It's not super important that this is sealed. I'm only going to be using this when I'm using defrost, but I do want to seal this some way, and they do give you some putty to put in here, so I'm going to try that for sealing this. But let's go ahead and route these wires now. So I've routed the cables through, and I thought this was going to be enough, but I think that's actually too much because once you push this in, that is a nasty bend in there, and I don't want this to bend too much. So I think I'm actually going to push this in a little bit further. We'll see what I feel about that. But what you can see here is you actually have to route the wires before you connect all this up because you're not going to get to that little hole before that. So I've actually got to go ahead and seal this before I connect this all the way. And I've also got to hide all this extra cable I have down here. So all this extra cable is going to be tucked somewhere because it's just going to my OBD reader, and you know all this extra stuff is just going to sit there. So yeah, gonna have some nice long cable tucked somewhere. All right, I've got the duct in here. I've actually turned on the AC and made sure, not the AC, but the defrost to make sure the defrost actually comes through here. As I said, it also comes through here, which I don't know why they did that, but you know, it's gonna have some nice air conditioned air coming in there. I still haven't plugged this into the OBD2. I'll do that later, but something I did want to warn y'all, took me a while to line this up. Every time I put it in, there was a nasty like gash of this that was off of alignment, so it was sticking out like that. So I had to pull it in and put it out a few times to get it lined up. What I learned is getting it an angle deep as you can get and then going in got me me, and pushing it over got me to get it right. But what I did do is I cracked the OEM duct that's back there, the little lip on the top of it that holds it, but that should be fine. It's in there and I've got all the air coming through there. I didn't feel any air coming down here, so I should be fine. The other thing is I got to put these in. But they give you a little bit of double-sided or some foam to put in here, but that foam would have it like sitting up or down, or there'd be just not even. So what I'm going to do is use Tessa tape and go around this as many loops as I need to get the diameter I need to shove it in there. So we're going to try that. If it doesn't work, I'll probably figure something else out because I'm anal, and if I did it the way they gave with that little foam, it'll be off-centered, and I just don't like it off-centered. I want it nice and centered, so we'll see what I get. Okay, so I've got the first gauge in there, and you can see it's pretty damn centered. I mean, you kind of got bad lighting down there, but it's pretty centered, which I'm happy about. So the Tessa tape's in there. It's actually hard to move. Like, I'm actually putting a lot of force on that to move it. And this is what the Tessa tape looked like. It's about 3 wraps, maybe 3.5, to get it to a point where it fits. And then when it goes in, this one's actually super snug. I might have did a little bit too much on that. It's gonna be a little bit harder to get that out, but there it is. So, you know, got 2 new gauges staring me dead in the face. So now I got to plug this in and see if everything works. And with that, I got 2 gauges installed. Sorry for the bad lighting, but I'm just going to scroll through this so you can see what all's on here. I'm not going to name it all off, but anybody who's looking can see everything. So there's a lot of stuff. You can just pause the video to look what all's on here. I don't know if all of this is actually giving out readings, but I'm definitely going to do lambda. That's one thing I'm going to do, or air fuel ratio, one of the 2. And the other thing I'm going to do is knock count. So there's the 2 I'm going to keep this on. But there's all types of stuff, maybe misfires too. I might do that for a little bit and see if I see any misfires. But all of this is what this gauge can read tentatively. Pretty sure some of this is not actually active, but that's everything that this can do. I probably should have routed the wires under here somewhere to get it through here rather than the way this is hanging. So I got to figure that out. Hopefully it'll fit under the what's it called? But I've also got to figure out what I'm going to do with all this extra wire, because I got a good couple feet of extra wire. And then the other thing I'm going to do is find some way to keep this glued up here, or some type of loop up here, so when this is this is not hanging, so I don't worry about hitting this with my foot. But that's all I got to do now is just that wiring, and I'm done. All right, time for another episode of Good Idea, Bad Idea. So what I did is there's a gap in here, and I routed all the wires back there. So it doesn't look like there's much metal. There's this, but it's nice and smooth, so I don't think it's going to really gouge in anything. And then I have that space for this to route out and go back out. So I'm gonna look this over some, and I might actually put some of the tubing over this just to make sure nothing gets eaten up, but it's all in there. So, you know, we'll see if that works, but I got to get the panel on first. But that's right now what I think I'm gonna do. And actually with it like that, this is out of the way of my foot. So I think that's gonna be the plan. We'll see how this works. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. So I put this spiral wrap around everything. So if it's rubbing on anything, the spiral wrap will take the damage. There's some exposed areas, but I'm trying to get the exposed areas actually not be rubbing on the metal. So hopefully this stays in that position. I will look at this in a couple months and just see how things look. But this is my final plan for inside of here. And I'm gonna go ahead and leave the wires just tucked in there. It looks like it's all plastic in there, so it should be okay. But we'll see what happens in the long run. Hopefully that stays okay. All right. So I turned every single gauge on in here that's possible, and if it doesn't have a reading, it will read with the last one read or a random awkward number. But anyways, I want to change these as I go. So intake air and coolant, you see those to have stuff. So I'm just going to go through them, and if it's the same as the last number, we know there's nothing there. Throttle position works. I don't know who all's gonna care about this, but if you want to know what all's on a Blackwing's gauge, it looks like that. No, that definitely works. I know that works. The long turn trim works. Engine load. I don't know what that means, but somebody who knows all this stuff probably knows what that means. Yep, the lambdas work. I don't know what that means. Air fuel ratio, of course, that works. Absolute throttle position, that works. Mat 1 doesn't work, but Mat 2 does. Same with no, transmission temp. I'm gonna assume that works. I never used it. IAT2 works. Knock retard works. I've seen it. Knock count. I haven't seen that yet, which is good, but it probably works. Misfires works. Fuel trim, I'm assuming that works. Fuel level, looks about 11 gallons. Should work. don't think these two work. Probably. I mean, O2 might be that. No, I think these are all not working. They're all the same number. Air fuel. That's the start of it all over again. So these work. Current gear, it looks like it doesn't work. Slip speed doesn't work. Torque works. Oil pressure works. I don't know what that does, but I don't think that's working. Yeah, it's definitely not working. It's the same as the last gauges. So MAV 2 doesn't work. Turbo, of course, doesn't work because there's no turbo on here. So boost pressure works. This is not working because it's the same as the last. Fuel temp doesn't work. All right, I think I went through them all. So anybody who wants to know what all works, I think I went through them all. If it's the same and it didn't change on the next one, it doesn't work. So you can go through this and figure out what works and what doesn't. But yeah, if you care, it's there.